Welcome, guys. I'm incredibly honored to be here with Stephen Hodge today. Stephen Hodge today. Sorry, my bad, bro. In our live series, coming up to our event here on the 29th of October. Check our Instagram. Tickets are there. Tickets are flying now. It's going to be a really powerful day. The panel is just getting better and better. We have a doctor coming on board who works with neurology in Vancouver, and we haven't announced that yet, but that will be coming soon. And it's going to be a super powerful evening. So if you're in the Okanagan area or you have a way to get down here, please come. It's going to be really powerful. So today I'm with Stephen. So me and Stephen met at our friend Lucia's Linking Awareness program. Stephen is a veteran himself and has gone through his own journey with psychedelics, TBI, and a whole lot of other things. So we're going to dive into that today. And man. So thanks for being here, brother. And also this has inspired me to start our own community podcast. So this is the first one. And I'm privileged and honored to have you be
As am I, man.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, so we met at Lucia's, and I'd love to, because we too have connected really quickly, and I feel so grateful for that, but we're still getting to know each other in your story and everything else. So I'd love to hear about what even got you to that point.
Yeah, more recently, I got hit by a car in June, and that kind of derailed a lot of the life plans that I had for myself for the year. And, these things have happened to me a number of times where, I have plans and then something happens and it gets derailed and I have to work around it and still prevail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you're all right.
Yeah, well, good now. And I was lucky enough to walk away from my accident with no broken bones. Wow. So that expedited my healing, but I'm without a motorcycle, so still dealing with that one. But yeah, and basically after I got into that accident, I reached out to Lucia actually because through the operational stress rehabilitation program that I was in Vernon, where I was given exposure to Lucia's, we went out there, and I'm not one to say that anything is ever in disrepair, but I am certainly one to notice when things need to be done. And I remember hanging out at Lucia's the first day that we were out there and for the program, and we were sitting on these fallen logs or fallen trees that were down because there was a fire on our property like 4 years ago. And I was like, I'm starting to realize that there's no one around here to do this. And I've got all this time on my hands because I don't have a job. And, I don't really terribly have to worry about money thanks to the support from Veterans Affairs and my situation. So I basically offered myself to go help somebody else because that's whatever you put out in the world tends to come back to you. And it's only something that I really recently started to learn. Amazing. And so I went and I bought a chainsaw and started debarking and moving all these logs. And through that, Lucia offered me the opportunity to be a part of her Linking Awareness courses. And with the grace, I accepted. And that's how we ended up meeting.
And so grateful for that. It's funny how things happen as that was right as we were kind of, this event was coming together and we got to chatting and a little bit about your story and how your experiences through psychedelics and stuff have been so healing for you and that experience and the power in that, because it's a really blurred line right now, especially with we're getting all this news coming out and everyone's very interested in those things, but like it's really still the unknown. So I think it's really powerful hearing people's stories on how they've come about in their healing journey, especially in something, that all of us seem to know so little about, and then that's people coming out of service, and that how challenging that is.
Yeah, it is a vastly life-changing experience that you go from having support to having no support.
Yeah,
and there's not many people who would be unaffected by that unless they were already set up. But a lot of people who are in the position they're not set up. They've come from a point of either being broken or through years of service where that's the life that they're used to, and it's making the adjustment out of that, because when you're out of the doors of the military, you don't have that perceived support anymore. Yeah,
right. And we were chatting earlier, and even the knowing where to go, right? Like what to do, how to deal with these things. A lot of the mentality, I think, and it's hard, especially I think as men too. Sometimes it's really challenging to be vulnerable and be like I do need help. And there's a lot of power in that, right? Like, so I guess getting into your story, so you joined in 2017?
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I joined in 2010. I had started my application process, I guess, around the height of the war in Afghanistan.
Right.
I was in school. My real reason for having interest in the forces was while a family member of mine was serving in the RCMP. I was given a book called JTF2, Canada's Secret Commandos. And I was 13 at the time. And this book had quite a lot of information in it, which, maybe 13, you could definitely romanticize and run around with. And but through my life after that moment, nothing else was interesting or captivating anywhere near the same capacity as to the level of dedication required for something like that.
Yeah.
So that ultimately caught my interest, and in 2009 I had applied, and I had wrote my when I was writing my papers, if you're 16 you have to have parental consent. So I knew that none of my parents would sign off on me joining, so I had to wait until I was 17, and then I could fill the papers out and start. And that's basically what happened. And at the time, I didn't have any interest in being in the reserves. Right, I wanted the experience. I wanted a tour, as all 17, 18-year-old scrappy kids want. And I ended up getting into the reserves, into a different trade that I didn't think I wanted, which was Armoured Crewman.
Okay.
And that ended up being the way.
Right.
And I was like, yo, this is sweet, but being in a G-Wagon is not sweet. And so I had eventually put in a transfer to the regular force, and got it very quickly, quicker than I wanted, because at the time I was trying to not serve with the Canadian Forces, and I had asked for an application package for the Royal Marine Commandos. And there were a few stories out there, a book even, Wearing the Green Beret, about a Canadian who had gone over to do the same thing. And that was basically the epitome of service to me. Was you don't need a flag to serve under. You just need your own spirit, and to go where other people are doing the same thing, and putting yourself in the environment of like-minded people seemed to be the most adequate thing and highest serving purpose at that time. Those things didn't happen, and the Canadian Forces got back to me real quick, because they were starting to deal with post-war attrition, and people were starting to get out and everything like this. So ranks had opened up. I ended up in the Armored School, and ended up on a Leopard 2 course, and that was basically the start of my career, and it had gone exactly how I wanted it to. I had absolutely no anticipation of going and becoming a Leopard crewman, but that's what I wanted. Yeah. And I ended up posted Lord Strathcona's Horse Royal Canadians, and was put straight into Sabre squadrons. A squadron was my home up until my injury, actually, which, fast forwarding through my career of events, got me to going to Shiloh, Manitoba on a brigade exercise.
Right.
And during maneuvers, my Leopard 1 that I was crewing jockeyed into a Lab 6 from the 2nd Battalion. And absolutely awestruck by it, because I had no idea, like, you're like, what the fuck just happened? You know, like these dudes were supposed to be 800 meters farther back, and they were like 200 meters behind us, if that. And
it could probably just happen like that.
Yeah, it did. It was there and over just like that. And I had no idea I was injured at first. I was the loader, and basically I got compressed into the back of the turret in an instant, and then back. And we kind of waited during the accident just to see what was going on before we dismounted the vehicle or anything. And I opened my hatch and got out, and I was like, oh fuck, something's not right. And like my back hurt a little bit, but after like a half hour, I started having this really bad headache, and I was like, oh no, like I don't feel good. Mm-hmm. And I did not want to tell my crew commander at all, because I was in a great position, kind of ahead of some of my peers at that time. And I didn't want to be like, no, man, I'm done.
Yeah.
And we had eventually gone back, and we were dealing with just salvage, like getting rid of 105 rounds and stuff that we'd shot off. And I bent over to pick one up, and I was like, oh no, something's wrong, like real wrong. Like I knew I couldn't go on any longer. And so I told my crew commander, I'm like, hey man, I need a medic. And in the span of time, about an hour and a half had passed, maybe even not. And my comprehension at the time was not good. And the medic like pulled me aside, did some testing, like MACE testing, which was like, hey, do you remember these words? And he got to the end of it, and I was like, oh fuck. And I was very good at mnemonics at the time, so it was crushing for me to go from knowing where everything was all the time to not knowing where I was, and not really being able to comprehend my surroundings to the fullest of my ability. And then the slip just continued on kind of after that. And I kind of knew that my career was instantaneously over, because there was no recovering from that in a professional capacity. Yeah. Especially to have other people that, their lives and your life depends on the decisions and actions that you make. Yeah. So I basically had to make the call for myself and basically put myself out, because I knew something was wrong. And my career stress at the time was pretty high due to some of the curricular activities I had going on at the regiment. And it was just kind of a downward spiral. But it took me about 3.5 months to get into medical. And it was even for a regular medical appointment. This is my yearly. And they put a form in front of me, and I filled it out, pretending I was fine. And then I got to the mental health part, and I was like, oh, fuck, I can't lie on this. Like I'm not doing good. And this is the first time I felt that my mental health was not good. And I'm like, oh no. And basically I filled it out, and that was the end of my serving career. They slapped me with medical restrictions, and from that point on, I basically wasn't allowed to fill the role of a crewman. And so through all of this, the next year after this, this was 2015. 2016, I had 3 major surgeries for a really silly injury. And that kind of led me down the road of opioid use. Mostly from overprescription from the doctor. And the 3rd surgery that I had, I got tired of being in pain, and so I just fucking swallowed the last half of the bottle of Oxy that I had, and kind of hoped to not wake up. And the people's house who I was living in, I woke up on the floor like a day and a half later, and I was like, fuck, and something wasn't good. And was in a lot of pain, and I went and I sat on their couch sat on their couch for about a day in their living room, and they were like, you really don't look good at all. And they had offered me some Phoenix gears, which is really concentrated THC. And all of a sudden, like, my pain minimized and I could like function again slightly. And I was like, oh shit, there's something beyond what I'm being prescribed that could help me. And at the time in my career, I didn't use any substances. I didn't smoke weed, or anything. And so this was kind of the first point in my life where I got to where one of these things helped me. Like, it genuinely helped me, because I didn't feel the same way. I wasn't in the same level of chronic pain like I was. It was just masked a lot easier, and I could live my life without being on an opioid, and that was pretty good. And from that point on, I basically was like, I will not be on pharmaceuticals.
Wow.
That year, I was diagnosed major depressive in January. And so, then the process of being on mental health meds like Wellbutrin and Cipralex and things like that kind of started. And I had started noticing these changes in my psyche and how I was acting towards people around me. And when you're in a rank structured environment, it was very quick to see how those things don't line up, I don't care about rank. Like, if you piss me off, I said, go fuck yourself, kind of thing. And it wasn't something I could even stop. It just came out.
Wow.
And so I started to kind of get to the point where I was like, this isn't right, but I also couldn't do anything about it, because if you're injured in service, you basically can't just leave. They have to treat you, and they won't just leave you there to hang, kind of thing. If you've been injured in service, then it's you have to get help before you're even allowed out. And so I was in limbo for a number of years, and
so that process takes.
This, like I said, the accident was 25 September 2015.
Right.
And my release was September 3rd, 2018.
Wow.
And that was expedited by me because the decision went to Ottawa, and when Ottawa came back to me, I basically said, I waived my disclosure. And I said, I don't care why you're releasing me. You've chosen to release me, so just let me go, basically. Because when you're in that terrible environment and you're already not feeling good, there's no real area for recovery, because the expectation of you is at a bar. Mm-hmm. And if you're anywhere below that, then your best place is not there. Right. And in order for you to start healing, you need to leave. Yeah. Right? Because you really don't start to carry on with your life until that point. Yeah. And while I was kind of in the depths of being stuck at home from all these surgeries, I had found a interview with London Real and Dorian Yates. And Dorian Yates was a huge influence of mine at that time. Mike Mentzer and the hardcore heavy duty bodybuilders at the time really were cool, because I was trying to get back to a point of understanding where my body was and how my functioning was going and stuff. And Dorian talked about his DMT use. And that opened my curiosity to it. And I was like, well, this dude is probably the most intense person that I could possibly imagine. Yeah. And if this guy is entering this kind of realm and he's carrying this energy and he's working in this way, why should I not do the same thing? Yeah, kind of thing. And it wasn't out of like a daring kind of, I should do this. I was like, I think this can change something, just based on his descriptions. And that led me down a path for a couple of years. But a lot of my kind of information of psychedelics came because of Hamilton Morris. Right. And Hamilton Morris's series called Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, where he basically gives you an unbiased view of all of these psychoactive drugs, if you will, that are out there in existence, because the majority of them are plants.
Yeah.
You know, and not a lot of them, aside from things that were synthesized by Alexander Shulgin, are synthetic and not around. You know, he had to manipulate them in order to get them to where they were. So then I started having these kind of inner dialogue conversations with myself, because I was like, you know what doesn't make any sense? Making a plant illegal, because it fucking grows somewhere. So how can you possibly say, how could some governing body come in and say, no, this is illegal, you can't do this, this is a drug, we're going to throw you in jail if you have anything to do with it? That to me was a real moral kind of dilemma, because it's like, well, I understand there's always more information. There's always some sort of other factor at play as to why things come out, and they're like, no, you can't do that. You know, like MDMA was basically Alexander Shulgin's child, if you will, and it wasn't something that was made illegal until it kind of got out of the use of psychotherapists and into the, hey, here's the instructions on how to synthesize it. And then, you know, people started going to parties and raves, and then, you know, the other complex reactions came, people taking too much, people mixing it with other things. And then they have these negative effects. So they were like, well, we don't know how to deal with this, so we'll just make it illegal, you know, and then in comes the war on drugs with Richard Nixon. And so, you know, a lot of my opinions of these things that were maybe predisposed from my life started to change, because it became, well, these things don't necessarily seem to be overtly negative. There is something else, but there is just a lot of factors contributing into why things are going this way.
Did you find with coming, because joining the Army at such a young age, you came up through a very structured and very environment where it's like, this is what you do, this is what you don't do, right?
Absolutely.
Right? So coming into then opening your mind to this other entities of healing and things that are considered illegal, even though it's, you know, the evidence is kind of all over the place. But like you said, those are great. That's why they did what they did. And did you find resistance coming into that, like when you started to think about it and research DMT, was it hard to shift your mindset there? Or were you...
No, I had already been in a kind of state where I had been mistrusting of the system due to I had a problem and they chose to treat me in a certain capacity, which was, here's some SSRIs, take these, you'll be better kind of thing. But things never got better. They just continued to be bad, you know?
Yeah.
Just a little bit more muted, you know? You're stuck in this line, and now, so now your feelings are perpetually in this, you know, you never go too high, but you never get the lows, which means you really don't get to enjoy life.
Yeah.
Or anything. And I was at a point where I was basically unhappy with feeling anyway. And I wasn't necessarily looking for a way out, but I was looking for a way to break out of the pattern that I was in.
Yeah. And that seems to be a huge thing too, right? That's such a good way to put it, is the pattern. Because how do we break these patterns? And with psychedelics, what's so interesting is these new pathways that are formed and new patterns that arise, right?
Yeah, and especially because these things have been made illegal, because you make a substance illegal, you control it, you also control the lack thereof any research that can be done on these things. So basically, since the drug war started and they started scheduling substances, research and information has been stagnant, because there are no approved sources of the information, because it's made illegal. So, you know, you can't, you know, scientists can't get funds to research things which they require, right? If there's no money in something, you're not going to do it. And so that most certainly extends out. And now that kind of these walls have come down and we're starting to see research happen, they're actually starting to be like, oh, wow, actually mushrooms are really good for your brain, like in a long-term span. Like they can measure that by the quality of the connections and the dendritic spines post mushroom use.
Yeah.
So it's hilarious to me to see oh, you were wrong, like the government was wrong about something to a certain capacity, but they would never accept that, saying, oh, well, we did it to, minimize harm, which in most cases is absolutely kind of the better bet, because, it allows a pause and it allows them to get other structures in place. Because if you think of the research that was being done, 50 years ago or 60 years ago, the quality of research has changed because of all the other things that we have learned and discovered in the time since.
Yeah.
So, and now even with these substances and molecules, the companies that are in legalization, they are altering the molecule to be more predisposed to not have negative side effects. And which again, is very understandable from a health provider's perspective, and having a safe drug supply to have available, right? Because if you have some 18-year-old kid who has crazy life experiences in terms of maybe how they were raised, and they're not aware of this, and they take a high dose of mushrooms, and then they end up in a worse place off because they didn't have structured support or structured container or a counselor to help them through what they were going through. Because your perception of reality is very hard to kind of get back to ground when you've had such this spiritual awakening or such a vast change in your level of consciousness, where life's not the same afterwards, because you're like, no, there is something else going on that I'm kind of like, I've only been made aware of slightly, but now it's really starting to affect change, because you've seen something, and once the cat's out of the box,
Oh, that's so true. It's something that's really interesting. I think a lot of people are interested too, is coming off of those SSRIs, how that goes, because that can be, that was used as a safety net, and used in what it does at the time was helping to get that neutrality if you're really down in the depths of it. Right? And but that only can go for so long, and it's great for that purpose. But then, like you say, living and getting back to life and all the beautiful things and beauty in the ups and downs. And so for you, in your experience, how did you came to the DMT, and did you ease off the SSRIs? Were you still on them? Or?
Well, when I had when DMT came to me, I should say, I was not ready. Right, I was in a very hard period of my life, being injured and trying to grasp with what I was possibly going to do with my life, because these walls really come caving in on you.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until about 2 years after I had been interested that DMT, like the opportunity to obtain it, came to me. And at that point, I knew that I couldn't be taking medications or anything like this. And I think this had actually coincided with the first time I came off of SSRIs, which was not my most successful attempt, because I did it really late in the year. I didn't have a good setup, and geographically where I was living, the environment wasn't supportive. So like coming off of SSRIs going into November of all things is like, there's not a whole lot to be happy about then, kind of thing. I waited the due course, and let's see, DMT, this was actually after my release from the forces.
Okay.
I tried not to meddle too much while I was serving, just because of you kind of can't put yourself in a situation where you might end up in getting charged or going to jail or anything. So, but after my release, I had kind of set up all these other life things to happen. I left the relationship that I was in that was not healthy. I left the environment that I was kind of keeping myself in. I did the military, and it was the time just aligned properly, and I had my first breakthrough on DMT, and then things started to change. for myself, I mean, I was so massively blown away by the experience that I had that I knew that there was something kind of else to the picture, you know, like
Right.
not necessarily that there's like a grand maestro kind of pulling the strings on my life, but that some of these things happen in life for a reason, and not necessarily ones that you always want, but I knew that there was somewhere else for me to go. You know,
Yeah.
I kind of knew at that time that the purpose that I had affixed myself to was just something that my ego had kind of fixed itself to, because I was trying to get out of the spot in my life that I had perceived myself as occupying.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the breakthrough that DMT had for me, was that it allowed me to shed the crystallized place of who I thought I was, to go on to this other thing, which was embracing the unknown, and kind of just doing life and letting everything fall by the wayside that I didn't need.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you find, because were you, when exiting your service, were you seeing a counselor, and then that was in use with the psychedelics, or was that on your own?
Totally separate. It wasn't something that even at the time I would even relay information to anybody else. Mm-hmm. It's not something I talked about openly. It wasn't even something I was talking about, because you know so little about something. There's no way that you can possibly have a conversation with someone that you don't know anything about, because you've got nowhere to stand.
Totally.
So I was seeing a counselor at the time because of my brain injury and getting back to life. I was going rather frequently for a period of time, almost 6 months. I was going twice a week. Cool. Just to basically kind of process things. I didn't realize the level of kind of despair I was in because of this massive outpouring of energy that I had absolutely nowhere to put it anymore, because I was putting it into my career. Yeah.
Did you find the experience shifted the ailments you were having from the brain injury? Like, did that?
Not entirely. I was still dealing with the effects of my brain injury. Really lasted, like me coming back to things. It's been 7 years since my accident, like 7 years and just about a month, and I really only started to kind of feel like myself or a person again in this last year.
Wow.
And so that was definitely something that showed me that there's still something else going on, and I had to kind of wade through my own issues by, like for the first couple of years, if I put something down, I probably didn't remember where I put it. I probably didn't even remember I had it. I remember walking around regiment looking for my water bottle for like 3 months, and I walked into a room and I was like, holy shit, it's right there. And the guy I was serving with, he was like, yeah, it's been there for a really long time. And I was like, I didn't even know. I thought I lost it. I would get in my car to go to the gym and I'd forget what I was driving to, just down the road. Like, I really didn't have a lot of stuff going on for me at the time. And the fact that I kept my life together really was just because of the military, because it was, no, you have to show up to work or you're probably going to go to jail. So that was really the only thing keeping me in check. But had I not had that, my life probably would have gotten a lot worse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's something we were chatting about prior to, was coming out of the military. It's really hard to know where to go.
Yeah.
It's really like, how do you go through the process? And something I'm imagining too, a lot of people in your situation where it's really all you know. That's the time when you're going through so much growth, and you're turning into a man, and you're getting to know yourself, and something like that happens, and you in your circumstance, you have your greatest skills taken away, which is not only fearful, but then you're also, who am I?
Yeah.
And so in that process I think that's something that, that could be helping people. What do they do? Are there things that they can do? Are there like ways to go, or how that's all worked, and is there a new way of doing things, I guess?
I'm not sure because everyone's process is different. The process I took on was heavily depersonalizing. I already felt like I didn't know who I was at the time, and I had subjected myself to service, and trying to figure out who you are after that is a very strange process. And like I see people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, other veterans who I've met they're only starting to hack that process off, and they've been out for maybe 20 years, maybe less, and they're only starting to be like, wow, like I was kind of on autopilot after this.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't do my job anymore, I got another job, which was I started working for the medical examiner.
Okay.
And which is not exactly a low intensity job.
Yeah.
And my specific position was I was a transfer agent. So
Okay.
I went to all the questionable deaths, homicides, and everything. And my job was to bag bodies and transport them elsewhere, which exposed me to a level of having to sit with my own mortality. Yeah. Because, I was in a mental health position where I wasn't super happy being alive because, I had just lost my perceived life purpose. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to sit with that. And I also figured that just due to my job and my trade, that if I was willing to do a job that would visit harm onto people, I should probably mop up the other aspect of it, which is expose myself to the death industry and everything like that, because when something's shoved in your face, you can't really ignore it.
No, and that brings a lot of perspective, I'd imagine.
Yeah, some perspective that I probably shouldn't have in my life. Just having to deal with, I shouldn't say having to deal with, but being exposed to the traumas of other people's life. You show up in a lot of people's worst day. When they've just lost a loved one, or, there's someone who's been a missing persons for a period of time and they've just been found. And, when you work in that job, you're kind of aware of these other things going on. And then you end up on a call, and then you're like, oh, well, I found that person. And it's unfortunate because you have direct exposure because, you have a direct link. You saw that person in where their last moment was, and you kind of build a picture of how their last moments were, and that adds perspective because it's wow, I really need to change what I'm doing, because if I don't, I'm going to end up on the other side of this, so I'm going to end up in a bag pretty fast.
And that's sometimes what psychedelics can really bring is those experiences that you have that they show you this new purpose, and they kind of bring this enlightenment. I was reading a study the other day of the participants showing this change in perception afterwards. Mm-hmm. And it's not about having to do it after and after and after, but they just had that perception gave them then time when they were coming into counseling, they were experiencing things from a neutral standpoint, experiencing a different perspective, and it gave them so much more room to walk and open up the world and how much beauty there is.
Yeah, and that is exactly what was changing for me, was because I was taken out of my physical pain and my physical vessel, and it put it into a place where I could look at myself and be like, oh yeah, man, like, you got some stuff going for you. There's these other things that kind of hold me down right now, but you can get through it. Regimental motto is perseverance, and that was something that has not left me at all. Because I absolutely have a mentality, which is that if something can be done, by every sacrifice you could possibly make to get to that point, will bear its fruit. Right. And through the process of treating myself, that is how I ended up, because I did get a little lost along the way, and you kind of forget where you're going. You're like, why am I doing this again? Like, why am I subjecting myself to this level of new experiences, and I'm still trying to process all these other experiences.
Totally.
And it allowed me to have some empathy towards myself and the things that I was dealing with in my life, and how I was dealing with them, not to mention at the age I was dealing with them.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Wow. Yeah, no kidding. And that, I'd imagine coming, because there's so many with this perspective that is so just amazing to have that. But then when it comes to coming straight out of it back into, you have all these experiences that you haven't maybe had time to even necessarily process.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you say, like, what is my purpose? And the program and finding, these ways of experiencing life again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because that sounds like for you what was super powerful in coming out and popping out of that depression. Like,
absolutely, and part of that deep rut of depression was really just feeling like I was stuck in a world where I was not free to live my life, feeling the oppressions of outside life, of like, you chose to live this way, so you have to live in the brackets of XYZ. You can't do these other things, or you, in order, to have a good career, you have to like toe the line, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just having the opportunity to open something up for myself was really, really just the moving factor. Because the hardest part about being in a spot, especially when you're depressed, is just fucking asking for help.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize that you're in this pit of misery, and you feel like it's all woe is me, and then you realize that you're like, you know what? There's probably someone else out there who's probably fucking fallen into a few holes themselves.
Yeah.
But yet we're still around, like humans are still kicking. So what am I doing wrong here? And really a lot of it is just kind of being a stubborn man and choosing not to ask someone for help. And the biggest point in that is knowing that you need help, and then choosing and trying to find someone to reach out to. And in most cases, a lot of people end up reaching out to the wrong people, and it's not even that they're the wrong people, just maybe that person at that period of time in their life is not equipped to help you, or even equipped to guide you properly.
And necessarily understand, the process, right? Or understand where it's coming from, and they're coming from it from just maybe a different point that doesn't resonate.
And when you leave service, in your 20s, you get out to the regular world, and people don't want to hire you because of whatever their perception of you is, or not even the perception of you, but the perception of their past experiences hiring other service members who maybe didn't deal with their shit, and like maybe didn't take themselves on a healing path because they were just trying to deal with their problems, because maybe they didn't have coverage from Veterans Affairs, or maybe their service related injuries were not present or in their face, and they didn't acknowledge them at the time, and they just stuffed them down into the internal box. And then 10 years later, these things start to come out manifested as something else.
Totally. And like you said, when you were after coming out of the brain injury and then being on the SSRIs, you didn't know where this was coming from, but you had that anger, that kind of outburst that you couldn't control. And I imagine that's something that's pretty common with coming out of those traumatic situations, right? And being at such a revved up adrenaline, and then coming to a place where you're working with people, or people who maybe don't really have that perspective, right? Like, so and you had mentioned just how coming out it's almost a little bit challenging to navigate, because there's the services are there, but it's like it's quite a big umbrella, and it almost seems like, I think the power in doing and creating community and having people, they see it like, okay, like I can talk to people and I can see, and then you can talk and start giving people a voice in taking steps that isn't necessarily just going to an SSRI and then being like, this is life now.
Living your life. Absolutely. And like, unfortunately, military culture likes to perpetuate alcoholism and drinking, and You know, like there's legions everywhere all over Canada, which, you know, post World War II and things like that were places where absolutely the dudes would go and hang out and have cheaper beers and be able to be, I don't want to say segregated, but you know, you've put people who are very used to being hyper aroused all the time and operating at this very high state. You're putting all the similar people into a room, which is better than mixing them in with the civilian populace, because, you know, like, you know, this guy might be treating you in a way that's like really like, dude, leave me alone. I'm not, you know, and so kind of trying to bridge that gap for most veterans, especially in this day and age, has turned into hermetism. You know, like they get out, they go home, and they stay home. That's how they end up living their lives. And not to say that that's wrong of them, but at the same time, it's you close yourself off to the realities and events of the world around you, and you can't connect to your own community, because your own community doesn't know who you are. They don't see your face. And, you know, myself personally, like I'm not free of that. The years after my release, the only place I'd go basically is the gym, because that was my place to go and sit and be with myself and work on myself and deal with my physical injuries and try and improve myself. And that was all I wanted. And I just needed a time machine to get forward to a point where my body was feeling physically better, and that to a place where I thought that my body could serve me once again. Because after that period of time, you really, you know, you struggle to think whether or not your body will actually come back to you, and or not come back to you, but be of service to you in the future, because you know, you've had maybe critical injuries, and that puts doubt in your brain, because the injuries happen once. So now you have to kind of be careful of it for a long time, you know, for the rest of your life, even depending on the severity. And when it comes to stress injuries and anything like that, you don't even notice or realize that, like, you know,
the wear it takes on you.
Yeah. And like, you know, I don't go in Costco anymore, not because Costco is a super stressful environment, but like there's a lot going on. And I also don't like going around to wait behind all of these people and, you know, like deal with this way. And it's just like, it's a lot. So, you know, I just choose not to go out. And when I would go out for groceries, I'd go out like for the hour before the grocery store closes, because there's less people there, and it allows me to sleep in the morning, you know, when I was in that rut. And so, you know, like I had totally changed my life around just to suit my own needs. And quickly realized that because I was suiting my own needs, like my relationships with other people and like people in my community and my space, they deteriorated, because, you know, it was headphones on in the gym, don't talk to anybody, and just just get to where I'm going, kind of thing, because you're in the grind, you know. And
and I think, you know, something I've been learning a lot lately, and is the power in coming from that heart space, right? And that you know, there's, like I said, there's nothing wrong with anyone's choice of life or anything, but if you unintentionally hermit yourself, just that human interaction and that love and you know, the growth in that, and how much that can bring you up. And things like the Legion are amazing, you know, that companionment and everything else. But alcohol, we're really finding out, I feel like this is quite a topic now, that you're seeing a lot more non-alcoholic beers and these things and stuff like that. I've been not drinking myself for a little while now, and I've noticed an immense difference. And you know, when you're in that place and have something that's a depressant, and that maybe at the time you're chatting with the boys or the girls or the crew or whatever, but after that, and then they get the hangover, and then that just piles on to everything else, and you just keep pushing it down. And so I think that to have these positive ways of going about getting through it can be really impactful. And I think so. After the DMT, you then started to discover, like, you brought in, you got your heart math instrument there and stuff like that. So where did your journey go from there?
So yeah, I mean, post-service, it was really a period of struggle for a number of years, because I tried to put myself into high intensity jobs. I chased EMR PCP because I thought that that's something that I'd be of use of in, and then I finished my EMR, and by the time I was done, I was like, actually, no, this isn't good, because I'm starting to, and there's the saying, which is what fires together wires together, right? And so you start pairing these things together again, and then I start realizing that I'm like, fuck, I actually can't do any of this high intensity work anymore, because I'm putting myself at risk of re-injury. And if I continue on down that path, I'm not going to have anything to salvage. So after that, I basically realized that I needed to just not do anything. I needed to take care of myself, and because I was really not being kind to myself in how I was kind of dealing with people around me, like I was burning bridges left, right, center, just because I didn't even want people to be around me, not necessarily because I didn't like them, but mostly because I didn't want the mental load of having to navigate with these other people who necessarily couldn't understand what I was dealing with at this time. And because I felt that way, I felt it was more appropriate to also not expose them to what I was going through, because, everyone's in a different place and different life experiences. And so it's not right for me to force what I'm going through onto other people, because that's not going to end up in me getting any help. That's going to end up in people resenting me or viewing me differently. And this is obviously in some anxiety and ego and things from not wanting to be seen as vulnerable. But I also felt that the people in my environment, the moment that I opened the door to a conversation that they were uncomfortable with, they swiftly shut the door. Right. And so it was like, okay, I started to realize that the people in my environment, they were set up to just not even be supportive of that level of change. And so I was running around my neighborhood one day and basically was like, yo, fuck this place. I need to leave because I'm not happy here. And nothing will change that. And I told my roommate, I'm like, hey, sorry, bro, I gotta pack my shit and I gotta leave. And one day came and I literally just I disassembled all of my IKEA furniture that I'd had, pushed it into my car and folded my mattress in half, put it in the car, and I drove back to BC. Yeah. And that was it. And then from being at home, I kind of trying to reintegrate into doing low-key jobs. I worked at a winery for a period of time, and that was actually really therapeutic because it allowed me to be outside, and I was using cannabis medicinally because that was how I was dealing with my chronic pain and my other emotional irregularity, is because post-brain injury, it kind of opened up this well of emotions that I had done a really good job as to building dikes to prevent coming to me and interfering with who I portrayed myself as a person. Right. That job that I had eventually fizzled away, and got another one, and that fizzled away, and then I realized I couldn't hold a job. And I was like, oh shit, that's what it's like. Oh fuck, okay. So then I kind of started seeing a counselor again to kind of have someone to talk to, because COVID had started in 2020. I had stopped working the end of 2019. Then I decided that I needed to, a big change needed to happen in my life. And through my counselor, I was provided the information of a operational stress rehabilitation program. And I was pretty closed about going to it, because I was like, I don't want to do group therapy. I don't want to talk to other people. I don't want to be made. I don't want to feel less than for my life experiences and my service experience, because in service, if you're serving and you served during wartime and you didn't get a tour, that's some shit, you know, like I didn't even get that chance. I didn't get to have that opportunity, and it's an opportunity that I'll absolutely never have again in my life. Mm-hmm. I mean, I say that, but I wouldn't want to, you know, have something happen. So, you know, I kind of subjected myself to this program.
Yeah.
At the time of this program was the last time that I came off of SSRIs. And it was cemented to me because I had planned it, because I had failed coming off of medication kind of 2 years in a row. And that was really starting to weigh on me, because I then started to feel like the hook was in me and that I might not escape it. And I had contacted a roadman in Texas, and I portrayed to the roadman that I was not in good mental health, and that, you know, I had been dealing with these problems from service, and I asked him if he'd send me some medicine. And about a month and a half later, I had a box of Lafafra Williamsi peyote cactus show up to me. And I went about consuming, and the experience that I ended up with alleviated me of a very, very good portion, like 60% of my stress was just taken from me. It was gone, and there was no way that I could possibly even relay the information to other people without sounding like some crazed, I'm the Messiah type, you know, like, not in that way, but like, wow, I've really found an answer here. Like, this is really blowing my socks off. And I was so perversely gentle with me that's where my profoundness in that medicine lay, because the whole time I was anticipating this big push off a cliff, and I would end up in some terror or something. And it was so gentle with me, and so caring, and so you know, it hugged me all the way up to the precipice of my experience. And I left that being like, oh man, like, I've really been bad to myself, you know, and like the way that I chose to deal with what I was going through was absolutely and understandably pretty logical for the situation I was in. But it brought me back to a point where I was like, oh, there's a way better way I can deal with this. And 2 weeks after that was when I stepped in the door of the OSR program.
Cool.
And that's where I was exposed to HeartMath and Wim Hof and some other like deeper counseling experiences. I had done a lot of EMDR before, eye movement, directional. I've forgotten the thing. I'm not qualified, so it's fine. Through that program, I really started to challenge the ever-loving hell out of my brain, because it gave me this information of the things that I was going through that like were ineffable. Like I couldn't describe to people, oh, this is how I feel. And then all of a sudden these pieces just started falling into place, because I'm like, if these people know what's going on with me, but I go to a GP or a clinical psychiatrist, and they seem to be like, oh, you should just take this medication and, you know, you'll be fine. It's like, oh, that's not the answer I wanted. You know, I didn't want to be medicated. I didn't want you to pharmaceutically fix my problem, because it doesn't fix the problem. It's just a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
And so my exposure to HeartMath and Wim Hof and TRE, all these other TRE is a trauma releasing exercise.
Okay.
It's another interesting one. Cool. Not necessarily as in the moment applicable as say HeartMath and Wim Hof. But an exercise that can be augmented into care, so that because it helps clear a lot of the somatic things, right? It allows a different level of like autonomic nervous system release. And so that was really interesting. And my experience with TRE in comparison to the other things was very lackluster, because it takes my stress a long time to come down. I'm also attention deficit, so it takes me a lot longer than everybody else to kind of get to a point where my nervous system has come down to allow these things to happen.
Yeah.
And, after the first 6-week program that I had been in, I was like, I've definitely made a dent. I was definitely worn out from having to put myself through it. But I just felt worlds better. And I couldn't even see past doing this program. I was at the point where like my life was basically over, like things were not going back up. Things were kind of only shooting in the dirt. And I was really, that was my struggle with that, was getting to a place, and they basically opened the door and said, hey man, what you're dealing with is actually real normal. And here's some information to help you deal with it. And it's through that I started to realize that I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing pretty good for myself, because I at least had the audacity to ask for help or accept help when the time was not only available to me, but also a program arose that I could be a part of. Getting to the program by my own means was not necessarily easy, because I had to break down my own barriers in order to get in. And like the first day walking in, I remember sitting in the hotel with a group of other dudes who were all there for the same reason, and we're all looking at each other, and no one wants to be there. Everyone's like, I'm gonna fucking leave tonight. Like, I don't. Sorry guys. Like, see ya.
But you almost hit when you're about to walk in these times of change. You get this fear or resistance that is really can be overwhelming, right? But it seems the people that are able to register that and push through it and open themselves up, is then once you start to open that and get to that place of vulnerability, you can really start to make waves in it, right?
Absolutely. And I was so thankful that the people who ran that program were so good at holding space for everything and anything that people were going through, because there is such a wide variety of life experiences that you can't possibly color with one paintbrush. And just to see that the support was there, and that they had, some of the people who were there had been through the same life experiences and been dealing with the same things, that there was support for it, but you also still feel semi-alone, because you're like, well, this is also a very individual battle, because you very much have to find where you're at. You gotta kind of go into your own psyche, find where you are in your own process before you can really start to adequately deal with things, because getting all that new information and stuff is really good, because it allows you to have this overlay. And the amount of aha moments that I had, and like, oh, holy fuck, like I'm an idiot for acting in all of these ways, because they basically gave me a map to see where all the problems in my life were laying, really, in how I was reacting to the outside stimulus that was coming to me. And it wasn't even just me choosing to react that way. It's all these events led up to me being way up here, and then I did something really fucking stupid, and I came down here, and then I was really feeling in the dumps again, and I just repeating that cycle over and over, because I had no idea that that's what was going on. And so after I learned those things, then I was able to kind of get up here and catch myself, and then bring in heart math and bring in cold therapy and Wim Hof and bring myself back down to a level. So then I stopped having these egregious moments in my life where I disappointed myself and something happened, I did something, and then it got worse. So really
and breaking that pattern.
And breaking those patterns, absolutely. And then, that level of introspection really just increased the effectiveness of my therapy. And, because I had gone to therapy and seen different therapists for years up to that point, and I really wasn't getting anywhere with it. It was just talk therapy to me, and I'm like, I'm just getting these things out, and that's it. And then that kind of became no, now I can relate why these things are happening to me in my life, and choose to make a different path, and choose to go in this different direction instead of just spinning in a ball all the time.
and being provided the tools into when you're reaching those points. You know, I think this is for everyone too, right? Like in when you're reaching those points of stress or anxiety, or you're given tools then, like, how do I bring myself back to that frequency so I can evaluate it properly and I'm not reactive or whatever it may be. And, you know, I think, and that's such a great description, but these things are also the stupid things that happen. I think we can beat ourselves up on it, and then we're like, you know, I don't deserve it, blah, blah, blah. And it's never too late. Those stupid things are gifts for us in the end, right? Because then, like, look what happens when you're able to, like, because if you've witnessed it now and you've had the tools, and we're always going to take a step back and then two forward, and it's just part of the journey,
part of the dance. Yeah.
But that's so powerful, man. Thank you for sharing that. That's, I think, for people to maybe after too, we can link. So we're getting a couple comments there too. Quentin,
thanks, brother.
And provide people, you know, who are wondering with maybe some resources of where they can get in touch to do similar programs or whatnot as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that things are available really is kind of the crutch to a lot of situations, because when you release from the forces, and, you know, some people unfortunately don't get to release the same way everybody else does, and they aren't allowed the same opportunities because of their item of release. So they might not be able to access certain things, which to me is beyond egregious, because it's you still sign the same contract, you still serve the same, I'm not going to call it a sentence, but you serve a period of time in your life that you will not ever get back.
Yeah.
And a lot of my feeling in my point in life now is basically being the bridge for a lot of people, so that they can see that, yeah, even if you are in a place that, you know, you don't think life's going to get better, it will eventually turn around. But it's that marking time where you're staying in the same spot, not moving ahead, and you're in your head because everyone else around you is going forward, or in your perception they're moving forward because they're just marching on the same path.
Yeah.
You know, they're marching at 120 beats a minute, and they're just fucking going, and they're just on autopilot, 2 feet in a heartbeat. And, you know, you kind of get this ability to pause and spot, and then you start to notice the things around you, and then you start to become more aware, because you know, when you're beelining to something, you're taking things in, but you're not aware of the position that you're anchored in. I met just the other day with a guy who kind of felt like he came into some trouble in his life and where he was, and he kind of got recommended to me through another guy who I met at Lucia's, and we ended up linking up, and, you know, he was super happy with kind of being able to meet, and so was I, because I was so glad that someone in a similar position to me decided that it was time for them to reach out, and that they just needed a little bit of a guidance.
Yeah.
And, you know, because that's all it is. It's not that someone has to do the work for you. No. It's just someone kind of needs to tell you the direction and the places to go and the things to try, because, you know, what works for me might not work for somebody else.
Totally, right? And we're all different.
Absolutely.
And there's all these tools, like you saying, the heart math, the breath work, the psychedelic experiences, microdosing. But nutrition is a huge one too.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, people just don't know. And I think being that bridge is so powerful, man. And I really appreciate you for doing that. How would you feel about us if anyone who's looking for that knowledge, or can I point them your way?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anybody, anywhere, really. If there's if someone even has a question, anything, to me, it almost doesn't matter if you serve, but at the same time, I'm much more relatable to people who have served and people 100%. Who have gone through the process of being in a situation where they are no longer in control of themselves, because they are subjected to an institution which guides how they live their life, or the decisions that they're even allowed to make, or anything, right? Because it is a different process when you are serving RCMP, military, even paramedicine.
Yeah.
Because paramedicine, you're stuck in a scope of practice where
100%.
you're, like you want to only practice, you've only been educated in here, but the way you want to help is really out here.
Yeah.
But there's no way of being able to kind of step out of that scope of practice and be able to do something else. You have to live with the decisions that have been made available to you.
Yeah.
Right. Not even the ones that you've necessarily made yourself, but ones that you've basically been given a guide to say, hey, you can do these things, but you can't do anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. All of, especially over the last couple of years, right? Like the people serving during these times when the general public have been going crazy because of the everything propaganda, blood, between people, everything else. Like there's so people serving as paramedics, police, nurses, doctors, all these, a lot, they haven't had much support system, and they are very much enclosed in this. So I think it's really important to have these, and a real reason what drew us to this cause and to bring awareness to these different healing elements and what we're about here at Mindful too, right? Is like bringing these tools to, there's not to, if SSRIs are working for you, all the power to you, not to smash any traditional stuff, but it very much is a band-aid. There's this whole other ways of healing that people aren't aware of. Yeah.
And a big thing too is because I think one of the harder parts for me to have to sit with right now is the fact that there is such a level and difference of care for military personnel, veterans versus RCMP or police versus paramedics versus firefighters versus all they don't have the same umbrella care system set up in place. And through my working for the medical examiner and coroner in BC, I kind of, it's a firsthand difference when you go from being the guy to show up on a call to being the person who, first responders being jutted into homicides or anything like that, just to get in there and be able to work on a person. You're being thrown into an extremely traumatic event because this this other consciousness, this other person is going through something that you can see, but you can't perceive what they're actually dealing with, right? And you have to see the reaction of their family and all these other things. Well, you're the stressed person because their care and their life is potentially in your hands. Yeah. And being in the police is very different because you have to toe the line between upholding the law and also still trying to help people. Yeah. And there are a lot of new officers who they feel very at moral bout with their institution because there's quotas in place and there's people who will complain in the civilian populace about homeless people, and they're the ones who have to deal with that. They're the ones who have to show up, and in a lot of cases, I don't think they get enough light for the amount of times where they have diffused situations or actually helped people get care, especially if their position in life is not that of the first responding officer or person who shows up to deal with them, because it's a lot of times where the first responder, they're just another dude, they're just another girl, they're just trying to make their way in life, and that's the profession that they chose, and now they're being exposed to someone who's in the throes of addiction or the throes of homelessness, or just, and for a myriad of reasons, whether or not that person, kind of let themselves fall in that pit, but at the same time, they're still the person being exposed to it, and there's very little support for those other groups of people, and it's unfortunate when you respond to suicide calls of colleagues, having to show up and see someone that that's a different level of crushing. And working for the coroner, you don't really get names. You get an address, and you should probably go here real fast.
Wow.
And then you get exposed to things. But when you are a first responder, you have the predisposed knowledge that you are stepping into a elevated situation. Something has gone wrong. In some cases, someone requires help, and you end up in tunnel vision, and other things kind of shut in around you. And then you get to a call, and you realize it's your friend. Oh, and you realize that your friend's gone or something like that. And there is no tool for you to be able to adequately deal with that. And I think the amount of other serving members who've had to deal with, the deaths of their colleagues and comrades and things like that, where, living in barracks, they've had to respond to that, not because they wanted to, but maybe because that's their neighbor.
Yeah.
They're one room over or something like that. It's just a totally different level of exposure that isn't portrayed in any news or anything like that, and they don't even talk really adequately about deaths during training or these critical incidents, which leave people maimed or worse, and and they still have to go on with their lives, but there's no, there's not a good set system in place, because it's if you are injured and I can't see it, then, well, you're not really that injured, or it must not be that bad, because this other dude, they had to see something worse happen to their friends. So now there's this constant ego bar of, you shouldn't feel bad, I had to deal with this, so you can deal with this kind of thing. And so there's this perpetuation of lack of care, because, in service specifically, there's a lot of older guys who are like, you don't need Veterans Affairs. Don't ever put in a claim. Don't ever ask for help. Don't go to medical. They'll make you worse. And in some cases that is true.
Yeah.
But from an individual standpoint, you can't stay in service and pretend that things are obviously just gonna grow up and get better one day.
Yeah.
A very good experience I had was with an infantry sergeant who, he told me when he was a trooper, he handed off stove duty or stove watch in the middle of the night on an Arctic exercise to his crusty warrant, and he realized at that point, he's like, it does not matter how long I'm here, this experience does not change. And that is exactly it. Is you're volunteering to do a job that has a set purpose and has a set reason, and there is not any wiggle room for you to bring in new ideas or anything like that. Yet in the policing and paramedicine worlds, you're starting to see them morph and move around to how they can serve communities better, and maybe how they can less serve communities, i.e. policing, and leave them to future mental health professionals who, instead of showing up to someone's house when they're in distress to arrest them for being, for causing a disturbance, or, I understand, if you hit your spouse and something like that, there's due process, but allowing space for a mental health professional, or just someone who's trained, who doesn't have the same authority as portrayed by society, to understand that now you have this weird reaction when these people show up. Like if we had a purple team of people who just showed up when you were in mental distress, and they're like, hey man, we're going to help you. We're not going to call the cops on you. We're not going to arrest you. We're not trying to. We just want to understand where you're at, what's going on, and all these things. Yeah. And things are kind of slowly starting to shift. I started to see a lot more victim services being integrated into calls towards the end of my time working with the coroner and medical examiner. And even I'm starting to see that the way that police deal with their mental health problems is starting to be a lot more proactive. Like there's people who are still serving who are choosing to go and get help and deal with the traumatic events that they've been exposed to, not necessarily that have happened to them, but that just they've been exposed to. Because when you choose to serve, you are under a hat. You know, you're just wearing the hat, and you are the individual in that spot. Someone else was going to respond to that call, whether it wasn't, you know, it might not have been you, it would have been someone else, but you're still that person showing up to do that role.
Yeah.
And they're starting to realize that, you know, you can't just kind of shrug off the events of what happened because, you know, oh, you thought this guy, you know, did too many drugs or had too much to drink and then chose to act away. But there's no panning back to hey man, why did you choose that? Why did you choose that asking for help from your spouse or from your family or from your friends? Why didn't you ask for help first?
Yeah.
Instead of resorting to this, and now we're here, you know, like, how did you get to this point?
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of a way that future care is starting to change towards, because, you know, you can catch and release everybody, but if you catch someone and you hold on to them for a little bit and you ask them what's wrong, and you kind of see what's going on, where their actual problem is, you know, maybe it's not what you think it is. Maybe it's not that this guy's homeless. Maybe it's just that this guy hasn't had a lot of food. Maybe he's cool with the way he lives. Maybe, you know, there's absolutely no way to know everything. And so it's unfortunate when the systems in place kind of put the people in situations to treat someone else a way that they wouldn't want to be treated if they were in that situation.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the bridging of seeing people as just another form of consciousness on top of yourself, because that is how I see things. You know, I don't see people as being less off or better off than me. I just see them as this is another person in their own consciousness, and they made their own decisions in their life, and they got to a different place, and that's where they're at. And you know, if I have any effect in them, and you know, like, I have anything to do with them, that's a different story. But them living their life has nothing to do with me, but it doesn't directly impact me. You know, them being alive doesn't make my life worse or better, you know, because if they have no impact, or they're not in a role to, like, they're not antagonizing me or anything like that, I have absolutely no reason to bother somebody. And in fact, if I see somebody who is down, I'm far more attracted to come talk to them and be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Because when you're in a position where you are the hurting body and you are the person who requires care, and you choose, or it's not even that you choose, it's that some things aren't made available to you, you just never go out of the way. And when you're the person who's hurting, sometimes all you need is acknowledgement, you know? Yeah. You just need someone to come and be like, hey man, you don't look too hot today. You know, can I do something for you? Can I help you? You want to talk or what? And that's sometimes all it takes. You know, one conversation away from some people could be the difference between good and a bad decision.
Yeah, amazing. I think the shift into, you know, seeing it from that conscious perspective of equality, and, you know, giving people the space to grow through these things, right? Like, and to start, because it's never too late. It's never too, and there's always a place to start from.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, time has flown by here. We're already on, I think, an hour and a half.
Oh, so, damn, really?
I will leave any veterans looking for some support or contact of some programs or anything like that. I'll leave. I'll get a bio maybe put on the website so we can have a source of contact for you, and then anyone, if they want to talk to us, we'll point them your way and give any support that we can as well. And thank you, brother. I
love that, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity. This has been very opening, and I wish I could have touched on more.
Yeah, well, there's always the next one.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Thanks, guys. Once again, check out the event. We got the event coming up here on the 29th. Tickets are selling fast, so come check it out. All right, guys. Peace.